Devlog number 4. Here's what I was able to accomplish since the previous devlog. It took almost 2 months of development time. So towards the end of this video, I will do a brief breakdown of its development cycle and the plan ahead going forward. But first, let's take a look at what was accomplished. The first feature is that I improved the editor UI visual appearance. The second is that we can now create and remove entities through editor. The third is that we can now add and remove components on those entities through editor. The fourth point is that we now have a hierarchical scene graph, the parent-child transform relationship. The point 5 is that we now have support for native C++ scripting and editing of inspector variables. Point 6 is that I have added support for collision and trigger events. Basically, it is similar to how Unity provides support for it. Basically, the on collision enter, on collision stay, and on collision exit events, and similarly for trigger. So I also added trigger collider support along with it. Point 7 is that now we can spawn entities during runtime, and when we stop the simulation, it automatically clears those entities only that were created during the simulation. So point 8 is that we can now rename entities, and now the order of components is going to be the same as the order in which they were added versus previously when the order of components was alphabetical. Point 9 is that I've added support for audio. And point 10, this is still a work in progress, but we can now change shaders in a material through material editor. So now let's take a look at how everything looks. This is how the interface looks like. I have chosen the greenish color theming and created all these icons. Also centered aligned the simulation play pause stop buttons. And I'm going to go for a minimalist design. I'll try to keep things as simple as possible. And one thing I'm going to focus on is that there should be only one way of doing things instead of multiple ways of doing the same thing, which basically clutters the interface UI. So I'm going to avoid that. So now let's start with the scene creation. So let's create a simple entity. I'm going to add renderer component to it. So let's call it ground. Through this process, I'm basically demonstrating a lot of these features that I discussed in the list previously. So just keep that in mind. Let's create, okay, let me just first transform this. Okay, so now I'm going to create a light. Let's add a light component. The light gizmo is now connected to the transform component as well. So it works as how you could expect it within other engines. So this is done. Now let's create a camera. It is also now connected with the transform component. So here's the camera. So one thing I should add is that let me add an audio source component, and with camera, let's add an audio listener. And if I have to remove a component, I can just click here and remove. So we now have a basic scene. The audio source, currently there is no audio clip added to it, so I'm going to add that. So this is just a simple wind sound effect, and it will play when I play the simulation. So let's start. So hopefully you can hear it. Yeah, so hopefully you can hear it in the background. The audio is 3D. If I go far, you will hear it less. But if I go near it, you will hear it a bit louder. And this is a positional audio. So here's a very basic demo with audio. Now I'm going to add one thing. I'm going to add another cube and just call it gun. I'm going to make this a child of the camera component. So basically what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to just give make it as if the player is holding a gun in his hand. So I'm just going to place it here. And what I'm going to demonstrate is the parent-child transform relationship, how it works. So here we have a gun that is slightly towards the right. So now I'm going to play the simulation again. So as you can see, everything just works. Let me just stop it and play this again. So it's now playing the sound, and you can see that how parent-child transform is working. Wherever I'm looking at through the camera, this cube is now attached to it. So this feature is really important here. And the background, you can see the positional audio in effect. So this is the first demo. Now let's move on to the second one. So for the second demo, what I'm going to do is attach a script. But first I have to create an entity. Keep in mind that I've added so many features. The engine is still, I'm not going to say very stable. So if anything crashes, I may have to record the video. But I will try to show that if there is an instability, we can see it here. So let's create a basic door. And for a door, we need two child transforms. And let me add a renderer to it. Just call it left, and this will be the right side. Now I will attach a scripter component. Scripter component is what allows us to add our native C++ scripts. So let me add that. Yes, so the door script is what I'm going to add here. So hopefully when I press play, it all works. Let's see. Yes, so basically just a sliding door. So we can now add and remove scripts within the scripter component as well. So you can also remove these scripts if you want. And this is how this is what it will allow me to add in various behaviors to different objects within the simulation. So this is working perfect. it all resets correctly as well. So let's move on to the third and last demo. So for this third demo, I had to recompile the engine because like I mentioned that the engine is still unstable. So I have to make sure that these demos work, and to make them work, I have to sometimes restart the engine. So here's a basic scene. So let me just quickly create. I'm basically recreating the similar scene, but I'm going to make a few changes, and what I'm going to demonstrate in this demo is the ability to spawn entities during runtime. So here I'm going to add a box collider and a ridge body, and similarly I'm going to duplicate and just create a basic ball. The idea is to show that when I'm throwing the spawning runtime entities, it just gets deflected here. So here we have a camera. Let me just position the light here, right. So I'm going to add another script, and this is called gun script, just a simple. So now I'm going to start the simulation. So here's the simulation running. Let's spawn. Good. Now you can see the runtime spawning of entities in action. There might be some issues here with the collider, but this will all get fixed in the future devlogs. But just making it work like this in real time through scripts is a very satisfying experience. So now I'm going to spawn some entities. I'm going to stop the simulation, and it will clear up all those entities. You won't see them in the scene graph, and you won't see them at all in the scene anywhere. So here are the 3 demos. It took a lot of effort for the past 2 months of development time. So now I'm going to discuss how the development went and what changes I will make for the future devlogs, because 2 months is a pretty long time. So it might be good for the development of the engine, but it's not great for audience traction. And I have to find a balance between development and marketing at the same time. As right now I'm still doing this as a side project. I make money through other freelance projects, so I cannot do this full time, and this is one of the limitations that I have to work with. So for Devlog 5, I won't be able to change much, except for the fact that I will now add in less number of new features within the engine and focus more on the stability. It might still take me a longer time to release the devlog as well, but hopefully after devlog 5 I will think about or re-strategize on how I can upload these videos more frequently. So because the thing is, the engine development is hard and it is still going to take longer to develop. And remember that previously the first 3 devlogs I was able to release them in 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks time period. That was because the code base was smaller in size and it was not that complicated. But now the code base is growing in size as well as it is getting complicated. So adding a new feature, it is required to not only integrate that feature, but also to make sure that that feature works fine with all the systems within the engine. So there are the checklist of every feature that has to be marked before it's ready for the demo, and that is what takes majority of the time, and this is what it took most of my time during the development of this devlog. I was getting like adding new features was pretty quick. I was able to get most of these features out towards the start of the first week of July, but fixing bugs, getting stuck in fixing those bugs and making these features work stably had took majority of the time. So I had a checklist with me, and I was marking them the tasks as finished. But as soon as I started a new task, that task spawned 4 or 5 different more tasks or bug fixes that I had to do. So my checklist kept growing in size. I originally started with 17 tasks within my checklist for this devlog, but towards the end it grew to 35 plus tasks. So this is pretty common with developing a game engine. It's not an easy thing to do, but it has to be done, and I've chosen this path here, so I'm going to do it. However, I have to manage according to what I can with my current circumstances. So for devlog 5, I'm going to focus on less new features and more on the stability of the engine. This may reduce some time, but I have to work on some freelance projects as well, so it may take longer to release that devlog as well. Then devlog from devlog 6 and onwards, I will re-strategize after devlog 5 on how I can upload slightly more frequently. So yeah, so that will be it for this devlog. See you in the next one. Thank you.